So that's the end of my presentation, and I'm now open to any questions. What you've just heard is a really good example of a really weak ending to a presentation, because it's ending with Q&A. And I suggest that if that's something you've done in the past, that you stop it. Finishing with Q&A is one of the big mistakes that people make. Why is it a mistake? Because if you end with Q&A, you end on the energy of the last question and your response to that, rather than on whatever it is that's most important in your presentation. So if you put the Q&A just before the end, you could have it some distance before the end of the presentation if you like, but even if you just put it just before the end to then be followed by, let's say, 2 minutes of wrapping up, it enables you to bring the audience back to where you want them to be, which is on whatever your key, let's say, call to action, core message, core change or invitation for change that you want to leave them with, so that they leave with a final impression that is relevant to your purpose, rather than reflecting on whatever it is that you said in response to the last question, which could well be a stinker. Of course, you don't have to have Q&A just before the end. You might say, well, actually, I'd prefer to have Q&A sprinkled throughout. That's perfectly okay. Set expectations for that. Get yourself on the front foot and decide how you're going to actually use Q&A, how you want the audience to engage with Q&A. And I suggest when it comes to the actual point in which you introduce the Q&A that you use affirmative language. In other words, rather than, are there any questions? Be on the front foot with it. Be assertive. In other words, let's take now 5 minutes for some questions and then I'll bring this presentation to a close. Or those are some of just the key things I think that we need to really focus on. I'll bring this presentation to an end in just a moment, but we've got an opportunity for a couple of questions if you have them. Do you see what I mean? It's a lot more self-confident than simply, well, are there any questions? You might even, if you are feeling in a strong, bouncy mood, assume there are going to be some questions. So I'll bring this presentation to a close in a few minutes, but before that, who has the first question? So the positioning of Q&A in a presentation is really, really important. Ensure that you finish strong on your terms, on what you want to leave the audience with, instead of finishing, as so often people do, on Q&A. And speak soon.